Warning: this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners. Due to the graphic nature, listener discretion is advised.
Keep the demon inside me. Keep the demon inside me. Keep the demon inside me.
Welcome from wherever you are. This is The Demon Inside with your host, John Venom. If you want to review a different episode of The Demon Inside, you can find them on Spotify or Anchor. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. A new episode will come out every Monday. And now to our show.
Keep the demon inside me.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Demon Inside.
More explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more hardcore.
Those that involve violence.
Yes, and I and this is something I think I want to emphasize is the most damaging kinds of pornography. And I'm talking from personal experience. Hard, real, personal experience. The most damaging kinds of pornography are those that involve violence and sexual violence, because the wedding of those two forces, as I know only too well, brings about behavior that is just too terrible to describe.
Now, walk me through that. What was going on in your mind at that time?
Okay, before we go any further, I think it's important to me, and that people believe what I'm saying, to tell you that I'm not blaming pornography and not saying that it caused me to go out and do certain things, that I take full responsibility for whatever I've done and all the things that I've done. That's not the question here. The question and the issue is how this kind of literature contributed and helped mold and shape the kinds of violent behavior.
It fueled your fantasies, didn't it?
Well, in the beginning, it fuels this kind of thought process. Then, at a certain time, it's instrumental in what I would say crystallizing it, making it into something which is almost like a separate entity inside.
Hello, my Demon Insiders, and welcome back to The Demon Inside. I am your host, John Venom, and today we are going to be talking about the demon inside, Ted Bundy. Now, you're listening to the voice of Ted Bundy, and he's being interviewed a day before his execution. And you can find this on YouTube, but I wanted to bring it to you and talk it through, because you just heard him say that watching pornography and doing what he was doing, basically the pornography escalated it and turned it and kept going. And he doesn't blame the pornography, but he's saying this is how a demon got inside of him, because he says he feels like it's an entity. Now, sometimes we don't think that that's what it means when they say it's an entity. Of course not. Nobody believes that demons are real except for us, my demon insiders. And we have to look at it at face value. When he says it's an entity, then I believe he's talking about the demon inside without trying to make himself sound crazy to everybody else. Because even this reporter that's talking to him is a Christian reporter. And this guy, being Christian, you would think that he would believe in demons, but Ted Bundy already knows that he doesn't. So let's continue.
At that point, you're at the verge, or I was at the verge of acting out on these kinds of thoughts.
Now, I really want to understand that. You had gone about as far as you could go in your own fantasy life with printed material. And you made or printed and video or film
film,
photos,
magazines, what have you. Yeah.
And then there was the urge to take that little step or big step over to a physical event.
And it happens it happened in stages, gradually. It doesn't necessarily, not to me at least, happen overnight. My experience with, I'd say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like other kinds of addiction, I would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it.
So, my Demon Insiders, I'm going to tell you straight out what this is. And for some of you, this is going to be a little bit graphic because it's in a sexual nature, because he is talking about pornography and how that jumped from pornography to killing people. And so what happens is a lot of people start watching softcore porn. You know, when we were kids, when I was a kid, we didn't have softcore porn on TV. We had like Cinemax. And the majority of the time, you know, it was covered by your parents, so you couldn't really see it. So we would end up having to get magazines or whatever from the stores and things like that. Okay, so in reality, we all masturbate, or not all, but you know what I'm saying. And there comes a time with some certain people that you don't get the excitement anymore that you were getting when you first started. So what they do is they start revving it up. So they go from pornography in magazines to pornography on TV. They go from soft porn to, let's say, you know, a little bit harder, BDSM. And before you know it, it's kind of like you have to watch something harder so that you can get excited. But then there comes a time when you can't get excited anymore and you want to do the real thing. And that's what Ted Bundy is talking about. Let's continue.
How long did you stay at that point before you actually assaulted someone?
Well, yeah, you see, that is a very delicate point in my own development. And we're talking about having reached the point, or a gray area that surrounded that point over a course of
You don't remember
years.
How long that
was?
was?
I would say a couple of years. And what I was dealing with there were very strong inhibitions against criminal behavior or violent behavior that had been conditioned into me, bred into me in my environment, in my neighborhood, in my church, in my school. Things which said, no, this is wrong. I mean, even to think of it is wrong, but certainly to do it is wrong. And I'm on that edge, and you might say the last vestiges of restraint, the barriers to actually doing something were being tested constantly and assailed through the kind of fantasy life that was fueled largely by pornography.
So basically what he's saying here is when he was younger, you know, church, school, society in general, they would have said that his thoughts were wrong, that he shouldn't be thinking about sex the way he does. And you got to think about this. This was a teenage Ted Bundy, probably 12, probably 10, maybe 11. I mean, depending on when he started getting interested in sex. And when you get interested in sex at a young age, you want to talk about it, but you're scared to because everybody is telling you no. So this was something that was hidden from society by Ted Bundy, because in society it's wrong. We don't know what we know today, we didn't know back then. You know, that it's good to talk about sex. It's good to open up. It's good to, you know, let your feelings out. But back then, keeping a secret is one way to get a demon. Looking at pornography is another way to get a demon. The addiction is another way to get a demon. You're looking at 3 possibilities for a demon to get inside of him. This is what they're looking for. They're looking for a way in. And these lower demons, once they get into you, they can invite bigger demons, such as lust, rage, murder. And this is what Ted Bundy went through. Now, I'm not saying that it's an excuse for him to kill, but this is the way I think it generally goes.
Do you remember the decision to go for it? Do you remember where you decided to throw caution to the wind?
Again, when you say pushed, I know what you're saying. I don't want to infer again.
I understand that.
That I was
clear.
some helpless kind of a victim, and yet we're talking about an influence, that is the influence of violent types of media and violent pornography, which was an indispensable link in the chain of behavior, the chain of events that led to the behaviors, to the assaults, to the murders, and what have you. It's a very difficult thing to describe. The sensation of reaching that point where I knew that it was like something had, say, snapped. That I knew that I couldn't control it anymore. That these barriers that I had learned as a child, that had been instilled in me, were not enough to hold me back with respect to seeking out and harming somebody.
Would it be accurate to call that a frenzy, a sexual frenzy?
Well, yes, that's one way to describe it. A compulsion, a building up of this destructive energy. Another factor here that I haven't mentioned is the use of alcohol. But I think that what alcohol did, in conjunction with, let's say, my exposure to pornography, was alcohol reduced my inhibitions. At the same time, the fantasy life that was fueled by pornography eroded them further.
In the early days, you were nearly always about half drunk when you did these things. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So let's go back to what he was talking about. He doesn't want to say that the demon got inside of him. He's trying to take responsibility for everything, because at this point, the demon and him are pretty much one. And if you watch this video, which I suggest you do, there's a point in there where you could see the demon come out for a second. And I think at this point, the demon really doesn't have control over Ted Bundy. Bundy has control over the demon, because he actually found God in prison, as many do. And I know a lot of times that people in prison say they found God, Jesus Christ and God, and they don't mean it, only because they want people to believe that they're turning for the better. But I do believe that Ted Bundy actually found God in prison, and he talks about it a little bit later. But when he starts talking about the alcohol, that he's drinking alcohol, well, we know, Demon Insiders, that alcohol, drugs, they lower your inhibitions. In other words, they lower your guard against evil. And when that happens, the demons take over completely. You could be passed out and the demons will still do what they want with your body. Don't think for a minute that you're in control when you're drunk or when you're drugged. These demons are ruthless, and they'll make you to the point where, and we've heard it before, I don't remember. Well, that's because the demon took over. You know, everybody thinks it's your subconscious, but your subconscious necessarily doesn't want you to kill. The demon does. And that's what they do. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Demon Inside. Let's continue.
Was that always true?
I would say that was generally the case, almost without exception.
All right, if I can understand it now, there's this battle going on within. There are the conventions that you've been taught. There's the right and wrong that you learned as a child. Mm-hmm. And then there is this unbridled passion fueled by your plunge into hardcore violent pornography. And those things are at war with each other.
Yes.
And then with the alcohol diminishing the inhibitions, you let go.
Well, yes, and you can summarize it that way, and that's accurate, certainly. And it just occurred to me that some people would say that, well, I've seen that stuff and it doesn't do anything to me. And I can understand that. Virtually everyone can be exposed to so-called pornography, and while they're aroused to it to one degree or another, not go out and do anything wrong.
Addictions are like that. They affect some people more than they affect others. Well, but there is a percentage of people affected by hardcore pornography in a very violent way, and you're obviously one of them.
That was a major component, and I don't know why I was vulnerable to it. All I know is that it had an impact on me that was just so central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in.
So he talks about unbridled passion, and for me, the unbridled passion that he's talking about is a demon. And because it extends, it basically makes it feel more and more and more, and you need it and you want it and you crave it, and that's the demon making you want that. And because Ted Bundy says not everybody does what he did, and they've watched all this porn and stuff, because they haven't had a run-in with a demon. And Bundy did, and he accepted it. I mean, it might not have been in the way everybody thinks, but somewhere he did.
Ted, after you committed your first murder, what was the emotional effect on you? What happened in the days after that?
Well, again, please understand that even all these years later, it's very difficult to talk about it, and reliving it through talking about it is difficult, to say the least. But I want you to understand what happened. It was like coming out of some kind of horrible trance or dream. I can only liken it to after, I don't want to over-dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment, absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that.
You really hadn't known that before?
There is just absolutely no way to describe, first, the brutal urge to do that kind of thing, and then what happens is once it has been more or less satisfied and recedes, you might say, or spent, that sense, that kind of energy level recedes, and basically I became myself again. I want people to understand this too, and I'm not saying this gratuitously because it's important that people understand this, that basically I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum, or I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with him, and just tell. I mean, I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends. I led a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret and very close to myself and didn't let anybody know about it. And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the all-American boy. And I wasn't perfect, but I want to be quite candid with you. I was okay. Okay, I was. The basic humanity and basic spirit that God gave me was intact, but unfortunately it became overwhelmed at times. And I think people need to recognize that it's not some kind of those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular pornographic violence, are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons and we are your husbands. And we grew up in regular families. And pornography can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. It snatched me out of my home. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago.
So this part of the interview is very important because he says that he felt like something took over him, something alien, something. He wants to say that a demon took over him, but again, he doesn't. And let me tell you why. Because the demon is inside of him and the demon is not allowing him to say. Because the demon doesn't want people to know that he's real. Because if they know that he's real, he can be exorcised. If he can be exorcised, then everybody can do it and everybody's going to know who he is. So he continues on to talk about how he's a normal person, but after he does these things, he doesn't remember. And we've heard that time and time again. And he, like I said, he goes on to talk about how he's normal. Well, let me tell you why he's normal during the day, and he's got his morals and he's got his education and everything. That's because the demon has already fulfilled what he wanted. He's already energized himself with all that hatred, all that killing. He's already done everything to express himself through Ted Bundy, in which it was the murders, and him and Ted Bundy were doing this together because Bundy accepted him and Bundy was in lust. And as he talks about him, Bundy actually names the demon, and the name of the demon is pornography. He says pornography came and got me. Pornography started at an early age. So if you start looking at pornography as a name of a demon, then this is going to push you into thinking or knowing that this demon is named pornography. Listen to this.
You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception. Deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
Yeah, that's true.
So, could a demon named pornography get into all these people and commit these crimes? Yeah, it's possible. Don't forget to subscribe to The Demon Inside on Spotify, Anchor, or any other podcast directory, or through our website, anchor.fm/The Demon Inside. A new episode of The Demon Inside comes out each Monday. Let us know what you think and join the conversation on our Demon Inside Facebook page and on Instagram. We thank you for listening and hope you'll join me next Monday for a new Demon Inside. If you enjoyed this episode, tell your friends. I'm John Venom. We'll see you next time, if I don't get possessed. The Demon Inside was created and written by James Porter. It's a production of Venomous Entertainment. Theme music, Demon Inside, is on the album Conjure One by Reese Fulber. Background music was created by Lucas King.